The price of pride. The early morning sun streamed through the wooden shutters of their modest home in Lagos, casting long shadows across Tolani's face as she prepared breakfast. Her movements were mechanical, practiced from years of the same routine, but her mind wandered to the conversation she needed to have with her husband, Oluwaseun. The children's school fees were due, and their youngest, Folomi, needed new uniforms. The family's expenses were mounting, and Oluwaseun's salary at First Bank of Nigeria wasn't stretching as far as it used to. Tolani knew she could help. She had a degree in accounting from the University of Lagos, though she'd never been allowed to use it. The sounds of Oluwaseun's footsteps on the stairs made her straighten her posture instinctively. He entered the kitchen with his usual air of superiority, his crisp suit a stark contrast to her worn wrapper. "Your breakfast is ready," Tolani said softly, placing a plate of yam porridge before him. He barely acknowledged her presence, picking up his fork with manicured fingers that had never known real work. The silence stretched between them like a chasm, filled only by the distant sounds of Lagos awakening outside their windows. "I need to discuss something with you," Tolani ventured, her voice barely above a whisper. Oluwaseun looked up, his expression already darkening. "What is it?" I've been thinking about working." The words stumbled out before she could lose her courage. "There's an opening for an office assistant at Zenith Bank. With the children's school fees." The sharp laugh that cut through her words was like a knife. "Work? You?" Oluwaseun's voice dripped with derision. "What do you know about banking? About anything beyond these four walls?" "I have my degree, a degree you got 7 years ago, before the children. Before you became." He gestured dismissively at her. Each word was carefully chosen to wound, and they found their mark with practiced precision. Tolani felt herself shrinking, becoming smaller under his gaze. "Your classmates from university," he continued, "where are they now? Running departments, heading divisions. And you want to start as what? An office assistant?" He laughed again, the sound hollow and cruel. "You'll embarrass me." But desperation gave Tolani courage she didn't know she possessed. "Please," she said, meeting his eyes. "Let me try." The children need their mother at home," he interrupted, but she could see the calculation in his eyes. The school fees were due, and his gambling habits had grown expensive. Finally, he waved his hand dismissively. "Fine. Try. When you fail, remember I warned you." The permission, though wrapped in cruelty, was all she needed. Tolani felt a small spark of hope ignite in her chest, the first she'd felt in years. The Zenith Bank building towered above her, its glass windows reflecting the morning sun like thousands of watching eyes. Tolani smoothed down her modest dress, the best she owned, and clutched her folder of credentials close to her chest. The interview was with Mrs. Okonjo, a stern-faced woman with kind eyes. She looked through Tolani's credentials with raised eyebrows. "This is an impressive degree," she said, looking up at Tolani. "Why are you applying for an assistant position?" Tolani swallowed hard. "I've been raising my children," she said simply. "But now I'm ready to work." Something in Mrs. Okonjo's expression softened. "We've all been there," she said quietly. "When can you start?" The job was simple at first: filing, answering phones, organizing schedules. But Tolani threw herself into it with everything she had. She arrived early, stayed late, and learned everything she could. Her natural aptitude for numbers began to show through even in these basic tasks. At home, the challenge was even greater. Oluwaseun refused to adjust his expectations. Dinner was still to be served promptly, the house kept immaculate, the children perfectly behaved. Tolani learned to survive on 4 hours of sleep, rising before dawn to prepare for the day, walking through her lunch break to complete her tasks, rushing home to cook and clean and help with homework. The children, especially her oldest daughter Oyin, began to help in small ways, setting the table, folding laundry, watching their younger siblings. They saw their mother's exhaustion, but they also saw something else, a growing strength, a quiet determination. Oluwasian's mockery continued. "Look at you," he would say, watching her rush around the kitchen after a long day at work. "Your mates are driving fancy cars, living in Victoria Island, and you're playing secretary." But Tolani had stopped listening to his words. She was too busy proving them wrong. 6 months into her job, Tokoni noticed a discrepancy in the accounts she was filing. It was small, easy to miss, but her trained eye caught it. She spent her lunch break tracking it through various statements, building a clear picture of where the error originated. When she brought it to her supervisor's attention, she was surprised to be called into a meeting with the department head, Mr. Ademola. "You found this?" he asked, looking through her careful notes. "Yes, sir," Tolani replied, fighting to keep her voice steady. "I noticed the pattern while filing last month's statements." Mr. Ademola leaned back in his chair, studying her. "You have an accounting degree?" "Yes, sir. First-class honors from Unilag." The next day, Adana was moved to the accounting department. Her salary doubled. When she told Oluwasian about the promotion, his face darkened. "Who did you have to sleep with to get that?" he spat. The accusation should have hurt, but Adana felt only pity. She could see now what she couldn't before: his insecurity, his fear, his weakness masked as strength. Over the next 2 years, Tolani's rise continued. Her natural talent for numbers, combined with her meticulous attention to detail and unwavering work ethic, made her invaluable to the bank. She was promoted again, and then again. The day she was made manager of financial operations, her salary surpassed. The changes in their household were subtle at first. Adana hired help, a young woman, to clean and cook, despite Oluwasian's protest. She bought new clothes, not expensive ones, but professional attire that suited her position. She opened a separate bank account. Oluwasian's behavior grew more erratic. He started coming home late, reeking of alcohol. His gambling debts mounted. One day, he was called into his supervisor's office. He had made a crucial error in a major transaction, losing the bank millions of naira. He was fired. That same day, Tolani was closing a deal on a surprise gift for him, a new car, one she hoped might help heal the rift between them. She had been working with her boss, Mr. Ademola, to arrange the financing. But Oluwasian had been watching. He had hired someone to follow her, a spy he was convinced she was having an affair. The photographs arrived on his phone, Adana laughing with Mr. Ademola, both of them entering the car dealership. The rage that had been building for years finally exploded. Tolani arrived home to chaos. Her clothes, the ones she had carefully bought with her own money, were scattered across the front yard, some still smoldering. The new car she had parked outside, planning to surprise Oluwasian, had all its windows smashed. He stood in the middle of the destruction, another pile of her belongings in his hands and a lighter in the other. "How dare you?" he roared when he saw her. "How dare you humiliate me like this?" Tolani looked at the destroyed car, the burning clothes, and felt an overwhelming sense of clarity. "That car was for you," she said quietly. "It was supposed to be a gift. I wanted to show you that despite everything, despite your cruelty, your mockery, your distrust, I still cared about your happiness." The lighter fell from Oluwasian's hand. "What?" "Mr. Ademola was helping me arrange the financing. But you've shown me exactly what you think of me. What you've always thought of me." She walked past him, into the house where her children huddled together, scared but not surprised by their father's behavior. They had seen too much over the years. "Pack your things," she told them gently. "We are leaving." Oluwasian followed her inside, his rage transformed into panic. "Tolani, please. I didn't know. I'm sorry. Sorry. She turned to face him, and for the first time, he saw her clearly, not as the quiet, submissive woman he had married, but as the strong, capable person she had become. You've been sorry for years. Sorry when you mocked me. Sorry when you belittled me. Sorry when you accused me of infidelity. But you never changed. He fell to his knees, reaching for her hand. I'll change now. I promise. I'll be better. Tolani gently pulled her hand away. No, she said softly. You won't. And that's no longer my problem. They left that night, Tolani and her 3 children, with whatever they could carry. She had been preparing for this possibility. The separate bank account held enough for them to stay in a hotel while she looked for an apartment. The children were quiet in the back seat of her work car, but she could sense their relief. They had lived too long in the shadow of their father's anger, their mother's sadness. Oluwaseun called constantly for the first few days, alternating between threats and pleas. Tolani changed her number. She found them a small apartment in a good school district. It wasn't luxurious, but it was peaceful. For the first time in years, she slept through the night. At work, she threw herself into new projects with renewed energy. Without the constant drain of Oluwaseun's emotional abuse, she flourished even more. Within months, she was promoted to head of financial operations. The children began to smile more, to laugh freely. Oyen's grades improved. Folomi stopped having nightmares. Their youngest, Bobojid, began to speak up in class instead of hiding in the back. 1 year later, Tolani sat in her new office, looking out over the Lagos skyline. On her desk was a framed picture of her children, all smiling, taken at the beach during their first vacation without their father. Her secretary buzzed in. Mrs. Tolani, your ex-husband is here to see you. Tolani felt no fear, no anger, not even pity. Just a calm certainty. Tell him I'm in a meeting, she said. Later, driving home to her children, she thought about the journey that had brought her here. The years of diminishment, of being told she was less than she was. The struggle to believe in herself when no one else did. The strength she found in her lowest moments. She thought about other women, trapped in similar situations, believing the lies they were told about their worth. She made a decision. The next day, she started a foundation, the Rising Phoenix Foundation, to help women in abusive relationships gain financial independence. She offered training, job placement, and most importantly, hope. Because sometimes, she knew, the cruelest prison is the one built by words, by years of being told you're not enough. And sometimes, the greatest revenge is not in hurting those who hurt you, but in rising so far above them that their words can no longer reach you. 5 years later, Tolani stood on a stage, accepting an award for her work with the Rising Phoenix Foundation. In the audience, her children beamed with pride. Oyen was now in university, studying law. Folomi had just won a mathematics competition. Bobojid was captain of his school's debate team. She had heard that Oluwaseun had moved to Abuja, trying to restart his career. Sometimes, she caught glimpses of him in the faces of the broken men who came to her office, begging their wives to return. Men who only realized what they had lost when it was too late. But those thoughts no longer haunted her. She had built something beautiful from the ashes of her marriage, not just a career, not just a stable home for her children, but a legacy of hope for other women. As she looked out over the audience, she saw hundreds of faces looking back at her, women who had found their own strength, who had learned to believe in themselves, who had risen above their circumstances. And in that moment, Tolani knew that every tear, every sleepless night, every moment of doubt had led her here. Not to revenge, not to bitterness, but to purpose. To healing. To hope. The end was really just the beginning. The end.